My name is Jason Piercey, and this is Out of the Fog from my very own living room. On this episode, I have conversations with two remarkable young women who are doing very remarkable things. Lian Morrison, she visited us, I think, 3 years ago now. She's a filmmaker, and she's got another documentary that is winning awards. Now we're going to talk to Gillian Pearson, who, if she has her way, the government's going to start making childcare a little more affordable. And as a parent, I got to tell you, I'm here for it. We'll be right back after this.
This is Rogers TV.
Good evening, 007.
Tell me what you know, James Bond.
You light the fuse on any explosive situation.
Got your attention.
007 license to kill.
Is this really what you want? Living in the shadows? Always alone?
I don't stop to think about it.
Welcome back to Out of the Fog. If you've been following along with us on our Tuesday night editions of community-related stuff, you've seen me talk to Lian Morrison before. Hi, Lian. How you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Been a little while. Just before we started to record, I guess we realized our last conversation, or at least for Out of the Fog, was like 3 years ago.
Yeah, it feels like it wasn't that long ago, but I think it was, 3 years. So it's been a while.
Yeah, so that was, you did a project overseas documenting sort of an ancient form of fishing. I guess, I mean, how else would you describe it? And it got some notoriety. I don't want to say it put you on the map because you've been successful previous to that, but this was a notable accomplishment. And now you got another thing going on that's getting some awards. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so this is my other documentary, the newest one. That one's like completely another kind of tone than the previous one, because the previous one I did was a bit more kind of somber. It had a couple dark parts in it, but this one's not like that at all. So
yeah,
I've gone way the other way this time.
So from a creative perspective, does that happen because of your own interest, or does the story sort of have to be told a certain way?
I think it has to do a bit with my own interests, and I'm also still kind of like exploring who I am as a filmmaker. And I do think that will change. I don't think that will always be something that will be just stagnant your whole life, maybe.
Yeah.
For some people, I'm sure they do get into their niches, but I think that you're always kind of growing and evolving. So with me, I think this particular time, it was just something that was fun and easy and lighthearted. And I thought like, hey, it's kind of how I feel right now. So I kind of want to do that story.
Yeah, it's funny. It sort of reminds me of, I'm a big music fan, and I mean, I guess you are to some degree too, with this documentary that we'll get into. And I like really like super depressing, tear your heart out, like unrequited love ballads, like Damien Rice and like that stuff. Like if it doesn't make you want to cry, then I probably, it's not my thing. And I was watching an interview where somebody asked Damien Rice when, if he was going to keep writing music. And he said, well, I'm getting really, really sick of the music that I'm writing because, I mean, it's good and depression makes for really good music, but I don't want to be sad for the rest of my bleeping life. So he said, I'm not going to write anything for a little while because he said, I'm just sick of being so sad.
Yeah, actually that makes sense because, he does. He's very talented, but he's right, actually. You kind of want to explore, I think, different areas sometimes and just kind of see maybe you might be actually better at something else. If you won't know. And
because you also, you've got a little bit of a propensity to lean toward the darker side of film anyway. Like you had a horror-related podcast that you were a part of, and so that's sort of in you.
Got a ghost tattoo.
Oh, there you go. Exactly, right? I can look like a ghost.
Yeah, nowadays everyone's starting to look a little bit more pale now because they're always inside. So.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's do a quick little. I've got a clip here that I want to show people of the current documentary. So can you just sort of cue it up a little bit? How you got to go from ancient fishing overseas to heavy metal music, kind of.
Sure. So basically, I think, actually, sorry, could you repeat the question? I just flicked a bobby pin out of my hands and it just distracted me.
So I'm gonna show the clip that we have, but can you just give people an idea of how you ended up working with this group, just so people know what to expect from the video?
Okay, so basically I first saw them, I'm on the board at the Nickel Independent Film Festival. So we had a telethon 2 years ago, and this band played, and I didn't know anything about it, and I just showed up, and when the band was playing, like as soon as I saw them, I knew that I wanted to do a documentary on them. And without giving anything away, I don't know how much I guess we'll give away, because there was a bit of a twist halfway through my documentary. But actually, if you Google the band, you'll probably find it out anyway. But I just knew I had to do it before someone else did. And it was just like one of those moments where you're just kind of like, I know I need to do that, and I'm going to do that. So I actually went up to the, I think it was the bass player afterwards, and was like, can I get your contact information? Because I want to talk to you about something that might be really cool. So it was literally just something that fell in my lap, honestly. It's not something I like searched. It just kind of happened, I think, through fate, I guess.
That's cool. Well, fate has a way of working things out. Let's have a look at that video. We'll be right back.
It was sort of hard to get Mark to stay on track while we were coming up with these songs. So, and you can kind of tell that in the way the songs progress on the album. The last few are kind of the last songs we recorded, and you kind of can tell in the lyrical content.
The song Microwave was just like made because like we eventually ran out of ideas for like I should have written a song about celery. I really don't like celery.
Okay, so obviously you can see some of the energy that's involved there, and why you felt compelled to go forward and say, I gotta do this before somebody else does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the band, it kind of like almost the story I found kind of wrote itself, whereas, because I do a lot of pieces now, like I do a lot of pieces for CBC as well, and a lot of times like you want to plan out your story ahead of time, and there's a lot of different ways you can go with it, but I found with this way, it felt like it was almost like written for me. I didn't have to think at all. I just like did it the way it was, and or the way I saw it when I first saw them play. Like it wasn't something I overthought. I just kind of went for it, which is kind of funny because like you sometimes think your most successful things will be things that you really kind of put the most time into, but in reality, this was honestly was just a really easy shoot. It was an easy edit, and it kind of just like worked out kind of seamlessly. Whereas my other documentary, I don't know if you remember, I had problem after problem after problem.
Oh, I remember.
It was like translation problems. We crashed a tuk-tuk. Like there's everything like that. But this time it was just so smooth, and it was just like a really nice, it kind of went with like the vibe of the band itself, I found, which is kind of interesting. So I think the behind the scenes really do reflect the film itself oftentimes. So
you have been recognized for the work on this one over the last little bit. Can you give us a little bit of a description of, I mean, I know it sounds weird. I should probably be listing the accolades so that you don't sound like you're bragging, but you're going to understand what they mean more.
Okay. Yeah, no, I've had it's done really well in the festivals now. It's gotten 12 official screenings, 3 awards, and 1 nomination, which I guess by definition now it's my most successful thing I've worked on, which is kind of cool. And so yeah, it's done well. It's mostly been screened in Canada. I had 2 screenings in the States, and 1 in Germany and 1 in the UK. So it's been.
So how does that circuit sort of play out in the long run to determine whether or not, like, could this particular piece become something that has legacy and has shelf life? Or does this circuit of screenings and festivals, do they lead more to credentials to you as a filmmaker who then gets recognized and can do other things? So what's the long-term play there?
I guess it could go either which way. The credentials or the accolades, like I said, it looks good on you on paper and stuff, but it's also a great way for you to get your name out there, or to pick up a distributor, or even to maybe some places might put it online after a while or something like that. But it depends a lot on the film. It depends on really what you want from it. So this film in particular, like, that's the other thing about it. It was like a no budget film. We didn't have a budget. So, but I had a really good DP who shot with me. His name's Duncan DeYoung. He did an awesome job. So I think it was more so us kind of working together for the first time and seeing how it went, and it went great. So
I think I might know Duncan. I think he filmed, did he film the Mr. Lube commercial?
he films a lot, probably.
I think he might have filmed, I was in a Mr. Lube commercial, because of course I did that ridiculous Mount Pearl rap video.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That's really good. He probably
And I
did that.
I was asked to like quasi reprise the role. So I was just like this douchey white boy who thought he was cool in his car in a Mr. Lube commercial. And I'm pretty sure it was Duncan that filmed it.
Oh yeah, no, he's great. He films a lot of stuff actually. I worked with him a few times, but
Yeah.
he probably did actually.
So what's next for Lian and Tim Bird Productions?
So I've had my schedule completely get cleared because of COVID. So I was supposed to be in Labrador up until I think last week, but all that got canceled. That was a really cool project that we were going to do with the students there. But now I guess like until it's over, I can't really shoot. So I guess right now I'm just back into the development stage in my films, and to see like when I can pick up where I left off, because some shoots aren't canceled, they're just postponed until this is lifted. So right now I'm just being, I'm trying to make the most of my time by actually kind of getting to early development on some documentaries, and I have my eyes set on a feature next. So that's kind of what I'm doing, trying to find a home for that and see.
Oh yeah.
One. So yeah.
So do you also write? Like, would you write and then make something?
Yeah, I want to do a feature documentary, so I wouldn't be writing for that, I don't think, but I do want to get into smaller fictions as well, so I have some ideas for that. So it's kind of good for me to actually have this downtime now, because before I just like, it's something that you constantly put on the back burner, like I'll do that eventually. Now I don't have an excuse. So
yeah, it's the same thing with me and my real estate business, because you spend so much time working in your business that you forget that you also have to work on it, or else it'll never grow in the direction that you want it to. So now it's sort of like there's no excuse not to be working on these things, because what else are you going to do?
Yeah, and I also picked up a hobby because I find I'm on screens a lot, so I started weaving as well. So I'm doing that as like just a little side kind of fun thing.
Oh, cool! That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you all of the best of all of the future luck for you and the Banana Boys, and I'm sure whatever the next project you do is going to be killer also. And if the time ever comes when our audience can just watch this documentary start to finish, you just let me know where to send them, and I'll make sure they see it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. It was nice talking to you again.
Always a pleasure. We'll be right back after this.
All right, girls.
Mom, you said it's played again.
Workplace injuries hurt the most at home.
It isn't the heavy trays that make the job difficult, or the fast pace you need to keep up. It's not working another double because someone called in sick. What makes the job tough is the moment you realize a customer has had enough, and you have to make that decision not to overserve. Refusing service isn't personal, it's the law. We know it's not easy, but we're counting on you to keep us all safe. Thank you, servers, for doing the tough job.
And welcome back to Out of the Fog. Ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful and talented Gillian Pearson, who we had at our most recent election show also. Yeah, so thanks for joining us. You were on the election show because you're a political aficionado, which is still very true. You are also an advocate for affordable childcare, which seems to have become a little bit more than a passion project for you.
For sure. It started with some basic community advocacy. Um, that same year, I ended up getting accepted into a master's program at MUN. So I kind of continued that research and advocacy in a more formal capacity, which has been nice actually.
Yeah, and that sort of has a bit of an extension to a fellowship that you were recently just awarded, correct?
That's right. So the Institute of Social and Economic Research through MUN has a mandate whereby they fund different research projects with a focus on social and economic issues in Newfoundland and in the broader Atlantic context. So they particularly favor comparative research on how we measure up to other areas and how we can solve different societal issues in the Newfoundland and Labrador context.
So comparative research, so having a look at how we handle our situations versus how a similar situation would be handled in another area, is that what you mean?
Yeah, so comparative research meaning if you're looking at a particular issue or policy, what have other jurisdictions done? What works and what doesn't, and how would that look if we implemented something like that here? So in the affordable childcare sense, you would look at other areas that have such a program and see what has worked and what hasn't, and kind of guide the research from there.
So you'll have a look at, I'm assuming sort of, you'll have a look at what other places have either done successfully or unsuccessfully, to see what works, what doesn't work, and try and sort of extrapolate that data into the context of our own demographics.
That's right. And while there's lots of, advocacy that has happened here in the last year or so, there's no hard data when it comes to numbers in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we have the numbers from Statistics Canada about, how many children are in regulated care and how many parents are accessing that service. But we don't have really important socioeconomic data to kind of round out the story behind that. So this funding will help me pose questions to people via surveys and focus groups to find out whether or not the cost of childcare is a deterrent to, starting a family, having more children, re-entering the workforce. Is it forcing them to take on extra consumer debt? So really, we're getting a more clear picture outside of, the anecdotal evidence that I've been providing over the last year or so. We're going to give some hard evidence as to, how, why, and to what extent affordable childcare or lack thereof is affecting the economy and the social, the social weave, I guess, here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
So I guess the end goal here is to provide, I mean, your thesis is that people can't afford childcare, and through a snowball effect of not being able to get affordable childcare, they can't go back to work, they can't have more kids, they can't contribute to the economy. Our older province gets older and older, and we don't rejuvenate. Is that sort of the long game summed up like really poorly?
No, that was a good job actually.
Oh,
so the presentation of access to affordable childcare, I've really been trying to position it as not only, a positive social outcome investment, but it really is a very broad-reaching economic investment, which a lot of people are going to benefit from if it was implemented here, because its benefits are so far-reaching because it allows so many parents to return to the workforce. It's freeing up disposable income so those families can spread that money throughout the economy, and it's decreasing the cost and the need for services for children later in life when they're in grade school, because all the research shows that when you have access to affordable childcare in the early years before you get to the K-12 system, then it all but eliminates the need for, learning and behavioral support, which costs a lot of money for these school systems, later on in life.
Yeah. So on top of that work, that advocacy work that you've been doing, and now the grant through the fellowship that'll help you get the data that you need, you've also been doing a little bit of writing recently with a partner, talking about Jenny Wright, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
talking about the work that our government has been doing in monitoring and looking after the well-being of its constituents through this COVID pandemic, but only specifically have they been focusing on just the healthcare portion. And you had some words to say about that?
That's right. So Jenny and I collaborated on a piece that was published last week. And it essentially addressed the issue that the government's public health response to this has not included a gender lens on all of the issues. So the actual, let's say, like the actual address of like the virus and the containment of that virus is only a very small piece of the public health response. And what we haven't been seeing is acknowledgement and a plan to address people who are experiencing this public health crisis and the closures differently. And one of those demographics is women. So when it comes to any response from government, both inside and outside a pandemic, you always have to ask the question, who are these decisions disproportionately affecting, and how can we close those gaps? And we really haven't seen that from government in their response. And they've really missed an opportunity to be a leader on that front about how they can address this in a more fulsome way about the ways that women are disproportionately experiencing this epidemic.
So is this, in your opinion, and I realize there might not be the data out there to be conclusive about it, but even anecdotally, is it your opinion that that's a local issue? Or, I mean, that must be federal and global even.
It really is a global issue, and there's actually been a lot of emerging research, even just related to COVID-19, about all of the reports of increased domestic violence, for example, lack of personal protective equipment for, primarily women-dominated industries like healthcare. All these issues have been coming to the forefront, so it's certainly nothing that's unique to Newfoundland and Labrador or to this particular administration. But it's 2020. We have enough data in other circumstances to know that in times of economic and social crisis, that women usually do pay the price. So whether that's from, no protection because we primarily make up non-unionized lower wage jobs, or the increase in domestic violence, then we could have seen this coming, and those preparations, have been woefully inadequate in this province.
I remember reading something just very recently, and it's so basic and so simple and just so obvious to everybody, but I had never ever noticed it before. And it just simply the way that we abbreviate how the demonstrative pronoun, if you will, of who we're referring to. So I can be Mr. Piercey, and you can be Ms. Pearson, Miss Pearson, or Mrs. Pearson. And somehow one of those three helps society determine what value to assign to you. And it's all related to your relationship to a man or your age or something else other than your gender. And there is no version of that for me. And somebody brought that to my attention just the other day, and it shocked me how long that's been staring me in the face, and I never ever saw it.
And that's a really good idea of a seemingly, inconsequential feature, of our systems as a whole, that lots of times, it's not malicious and it's not deliberate in terms of the way some of these things are structured, but, the psychological underpinnings of, usually women are presented in the world in relation to a man.
Yes.
And not in the unique ways in which, we experience life differently. There's a book called Invisible Women, and it's basically talks about all the different big data gaps. Yeah.
I meant what you knew.
Yeah, you know what I mean. When it comes to women and addressing, the ways that we work and live and function in the world. And a lot of the times the data is gleaned from male data, but it's treated as if it's universal. So just for example, testing cars based on specs of male dummies, treating women's heart attacks with the symptoms that most male reports. That's been emerging, that women are experiencing heart attacks, with much different symptoms. So we can't really treat the male experience as a universal experience. And that's very much the same with policy response, right? We can't just assume that men and women are experiencing a particular decision or particular circumstances the same way. And that's why a gendered response and a gender-based analysis is so important, because, it has major social implications, but huge economic ones too. Everyone in government wants to make sure that they're delivering services, the most cost-effective and efficient way. But if you don't build in that analysis at the beginning, you're wasting a lot of time and money.
And it's not just enough to say that 52% of cases are female and 48 are male. Jillian, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be right back after this.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Welcome back to Out of the Fog. I love hearing about people who are doing good things for our community. It is my favorite thing to do here. And you know what? Here's a shout out for you. If you or someone you know is doing something cool for our community, why don't you look me up? Send me a message. I'm easy to find, and I got lots of time to talk to you about all of the wonderful things that are going on here. And Rogers TV wants to tell your story. So have a good day, and we'll talk to you.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
I want to report a kidnapping.
There are no open or closed cases that match your date or description.
I'm just someone who saw it.
So what?
Saw them take him.
Tell someone. See if they believe you.
I've got unfinished business.
Gina.
I'm gonna find the man who murdered my wife and kill him.
Revenge is what makes a man like you exceptional. Oh, that's not good.
The School Lunch Association is a registered charity that provides a hot, nutritious lunch for school children in over 36 schools, regardless of a family's financial situation. We believe that every child should have a hot, nutritious meal, because good nutrition promotes better learning.
COVID-19 has affected us all, including one of the most needed resources for our children, the School Lunch Association. We've donated all our food stocks to other charities and food banks so that others can benefit. But when the school bell rings again, the School Lunch Association will be back, like we have been for over 30 years, providing hot, nutritious lunches to more children than ever.
Your donation is